had a session on what Puzzle Talks are this past year. And for some of you, this might kind of be new information. Hi. Oh, thank you so much for bringing me the raisin. Thank you. Bye, babe. Apologize for that. And for some of you, you might not have a ton of knowledge about what Puzzle Talks are. So the beginning, I am going to show some videos that hopefully for those that are new to Puzzle Talks will kind of give you framing of what they are. But also for those that have already done them, they are specific to doing them virtually. So hopefully we can kind of dig in and look at them together. And then the majority of time at the end, will be for you to using the data and the scope and sequence maps that you guys got to work on earlier today, actually planning out some Puzzle Talks and doing a rehearsal so that you're ready to really apply them to your lessons moving forward, which is super exciting. So we are going to go ahead and dig in. I'm going to be kind of going back and forth between the slides and this resource, which is linked here. And I'm going to send these slides to you because there's a ton of really great resources on this link, which is on ST Math Help, so that you guys can use them moving forward. So before we dig in, just really quickly, what is a Puzzle Talk? Does anyone who has done them before kind of want to talk quickly about what it is?
I can kind of explain what it is. Or Emily, I saw your mouth open. No, go ahead. You want to? You good?
No, you go, because he's going to interrupt.
Jen, let's take it.
All right, fine. So a Puzzle Talk is really just kind of like a breakdown and a teacher-led session of a specific game or level within ST Math, where you're really just kind of going through each individual step and putting your position as if you are one of their students. So I'm a K4 teacher, so I really just kind of go to the basics like, oh, okay, let's move our mouse around. What happens when we move our mouse around? So you really start at like the basic, meeting them where they're at and walking them through understanding what the objective is.
Awesome, Jen. So yes, so it's taking one of the puzzles, and we'll talk a little bit later about how to choose which puzzles would be good to do with your students, and walking them through and modeling it. What I love what you said, Jen, is like as a student lens, right? So this is the learning cycle that they recommend for Puzzle Talks. And in a second, we are going to watch a video of a virtual Puzzle Talk. But really, when you walk through, there's this learning cycle that I think is really powerful because it really are the best practices for students attacking any math problem via in ST Math or on a cumulative or in the real world. And to be honest, these are actually really great learning cycles for reading and for any other thing that you're doing. So the first thing is really thinking about like noticing. And these are some questions that you would ask, like, what do you think the puzzle is asking you to do? What do you notice about the puzzle? The next is making predictions. What do you think is going to happen? If I click this, what's going to happen? Analyzing, which is the next piece, which is, okay, we clicked that. What did happen? Why? What could we have done differently? And then finally connecting it to our larger math content. And we're going to watch some videos of a teacher and how she actually extends the math puzzle into our Common Core standards that we have done. This poster also is actually on the resource page. So if you wanted to use it as like a slide, you definitely could do that. So the first thing that we are going to do, and if anyone doesn't know, I really love Gigi, so you'll see that I pulled a lot of fun Gigi pictures for these slides. I got kind of fun with them. But the first video we're going to watch is just of a virtual puzzle talk. And when we watch, what do you notice about how this teacher sets up the talk, what questions she asks, how is she really modeling how we want students to explore and use trial and error in their math? So this page right here is the link that was up above, and you'll notice that there are a ton of different, oops, let me go back and restart this one, a ton of different resources that you can use. Timed out on me. All right. So here is the first video. I'm going to turn it up for you guys. Please let me know if you have any issues.
So my school district is 100% online this year. And I teach first graders, so that means I have 6-year-olds at home, not in my classroom, and I'm not able to do the type of hands-on group activities that I normally do. And Puzzle Talks has been a lifesaver. It's a way for all of us to focus on one puzzle at a time. We're all looking at the screen, talking about what we're seeing, talking about our strategies, getting that feedback from the puzzle right away. And that lets us talk as a class about, why did that answer work? Why didn't that answer work? What is the math that we're seeing here? All right. The first thing I want to know is, what do you see? So can you raise your hand and tell me something you see on that screen? What's something you see? What do you see? Parisa, what do you see?
I see Bulldozer and Gigi and 2 blocks standing on.
Okay, so we see a bulldozer and Gigi and some blocks Gigi standing on. Maggie, what do you see?
And different.
Okay, we'll get to that, Parisa. Let's go. Maggie, what else do you see?
I see 10 white blocks.
Okay, come a little closer to your computer just so we can hear you, okay? Yeah, you see 10 white blocks. All right, Ben, what do you see?
I see 2 holes in the ground.
Oh, 2 holes in the ground. Okay. So we see Gigi with the bulldozer. We see Gigi standing on blocks. Maggie counted those white blocks and said they were 10. Now, Ben said he saw 2 holes in the ground. Parisa, the first thing you said was you saw something different. What did you notice that was different about this puzzle from the other ones we've been doing?
2 square holes. So that means when the bulldozer pushes that thing, 2 of those blocks will go down, and then Gigi will have 3 more.
Interesting. Okay, so Parisa said this is different. The ones we've done before, Maggie, didn't have holes in the ground, right? Ben said there's holes in the ground, and the other puzzles didn't have holes in the ground. So the next thing we always check is, what can we click? What are we able to choose? I can't change the number of blocks Gigi's standing on. I can't change the holes in the ground, but I can change the number of blocks I pick over here. So I want you on your dry erase board to tell me how many of those white blocks you think I should pick. So get your dry erase board and marker and put down how many of those white blocks you think I should pick. Was helping fix that?
Yeah, 3.
Oh, Hadley, I think I heard you say it again.
You got to write something on, man.
That was Ben. Okay. Good. So they're saying 3. So Maggie, can you tell us why you think it should be 3? Why do you want me to pick 3 blocks?
I think it'll give it a little boost because there's 2 there, and
Okay. So
I think he's trying to say 2 will go into the 2 holes, and 3.
If you move it up 2 blocks,
And then 3 will go in the ground, and then once it slides, Gigi can go.
Okay, so let's watch and see what happens. I'm going to move Gigi. I want you to watch. So Maggie, try to be still and watch what's happening on the screen. Okay, see if what you think is going to happen happens. All right, here we go. So watch what happens when Gigi moves across the screen.
Yay!
Right? So Hadley, what happened there? What happened when Gigi pushed that bulldozer pushed Gigi over that hole? What happened?
He put 2 blocks in there, and he
Okay.
had 3 more left. The perfect
And
number.
3 left.
All right. So going back, I love when you see other kids in virtual learning and they're doing the same things our kids are doing. It's always helpful to perspective. So what did you notice about the questions she asked? How did she set up this puzzle talk for her students? And people can just come off mute and share their thinking.
What I liked was that when she asked, what did you see? And she gave everybody a chance to say one thing that they see. One of the holdbacks that I noticed when I was first doing these was that I didn't have as many students participating. Everybody didn't get a chance. After we had that PD talking about how to get everybody to respond to more questions, I started adding in things where they would show me a hand motion. So if we're doing the grid thing or something, instead of me just asking one student to help me solve the puzzle, I would like move the cursor after they told me what they saw. I would move the cursor and it was time for me to stop. Everybody had to like do a hand motion or come off mute to say stop, just to get more people to respond. So that was one thing that I really liked, was that everybody had a chance to name one thing that they saw.
One thing that I really liked and appreciated that she did was that she was really clear on her narration of every single thing that the student said. She would reiterate it in like a more clear way for them to understand and for them to build those foundational skills on top of one another in order to solve that puzzle. I really appreciated that.
I like how she used the whiteboard to also like to write down the numbers and just include that as an extra step, extra practice.
Yes, I love that you pointed that out, Emily, because I think when you were talking about how we get every kid to engage in it, I think that's something I also pulled out was the whiteboards. Another video that we're not going to watch as a team, but if you guys wanted to come back to it, is this one, which is a short 1 minute and 35 seconds, but it talks about more engagement strategies that you can use, to Emily's point of how do we use more whiteboards, how do we use chat features, how do we do those things to have more kids really engage, and using a lot of those same exact awesome strategies that you guys have been doing in your normal lessons, that you can use with Gigi, which I think Puzzle Talks inherently are pretty engaging because kids really get into them. I've seen when you guys have done Puzzle Talks, kids cheering similar to these kids when Gigi actually makes it across the screen. So really thinking like, what are the different techniques that you guys already know that you can also apply to Gigi? Don't want to X out of it. Okay. So before we go into actually getting to like practice and plan some, we're going to watch short pieces to 2 other videos that are both about extending the puzzles and using the data in the moment of how do we actually, because I think kind of our big theme right now is how do we use these as tools to really build on to the math concepts that you guys are teaching in your core lessons, in your math meetings, and other parts of your day. So we're going to look at these, and I want you to think about how does the teacher make connections to math concepts? How does she also like use it to adjust her teaching throughout based on what students are able to do?
I've used the Puzzle Talks Together whole group, and then I like to leave with a question that looks a little more like what they're seeing on assessments or on pencil paper work that we're doing, to see if they can make that transition from what we're seeing in the puzzles to what they might be asked in another format to kind of check the math. It says Robot was playing this puzzle and wrote down the following equation to represent the puzzle. So Robot is Gigi's friend, and Robot saw this puzzle and wrote down 9 + 3 = 12. I just want you to think first, don't talk yet. Do you agree with Robot, and why or why not? So I like how Hadley's putting stuff down on her board. Parisa, I want you to think about this. Parisa, do you agree with Robot, why or why not? It says that Robot was playing this puzzle and wrote down 9 + 3 = 12. Do you agree with Robot, why or why not? So in your head, you're thinking, yes, I agree because, or no, I don't agree because. All right, Parisa, what do you think? Do you agree with Robot, why or why not?
I agree with Robot because
agree, Robot.
I agree with Robot because it's right, I think.
Okay, let's get into that more. So you think that, and Ben, it sounded like Ben agreed with you, and Hadley, you had written down yes. So would we represent this problem, now that we know what happens in these puzzles, would you say that Gigi has 9 blocks and gets 3 more blocks and puts them together to make 12? You told me before that the plus sign means put together. So if I see 9 + 3 = 12, that means 9 of something and 3 of something, and we put them together. Does this puzzle look like a put together problem for you? What do you think? Hadley, did you change your mind? We talked about that this morning. Hadley, why did you change your mind?
Because it's a minus problem.
How do you know it's a minus problem?
Because there's 3 holes in the ground.
There's 3 holes in the ground. Ben, do you see those? We said those holes in the ground meant we were subtracting, we were taking away. So robot used the wrong symbol. Can you write down the number sentence robot should have written down? Hadley says it should have a minus sign in it. Do you see that, Parisa? Hadley said there's holes in the ground. We said those were takeaway problems. So what should the takeaway number sentence look like? What should the subtraction number sentence look like? So Maggie, how many blocks does Gigi start with?
9.
9.
And she takes away 3.
Yep. And how many are left? And 6 are left. Exactly. Good job, Hadley. You had that right. Hadley, could you tell a story about this puzzle? Could you make this puzzle into a story problem? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you think you could tell a story about this puzzle? What would you say if you were telling a story? How might it sound as a word problem or a story problem?
Emily had 9 cookies.
Yeah, and then what happened?
Her mom decided to take away 3.
Oh, man. Okay, and what would you be trying to find out then?
How much she had left.
Exactly. It's true. I don't know what I'd be doing, really. This is so hard for this level of math to not be hands-on. And this is the best way I've found to make it hands-on.
And then the last thing we're going to watch is just a minute of her reflection from that, and then we will talk about it.
So when we got to the end of the puzzle talk and I showed them the problem that I had, hoping they would all get it right, and then they all got it wrong. I, of course, was disappointed, but I had to keep in mind that this puzzle talk was just one tool in my toolbox for trying to teach the kids about subtraction. And I was trying to show them a visual representation of subtraction as taking apart. So that was just our first time doing that puzzle talk, and that let me know that they still had not made that connection to what was happening with the blocks when the blocks were being taken away, that would be represented by subtraction. Addition is putting together. Gigi wasn't getting more blocks. Gigi was having some blocks that were taken away. So when they thought that puzzle could be represented with addition, I took them back to what was happening on the screen. What did they see? What was happening with the blocks? And Gigi was starting with the hole, and then as the blocks moved across the screen, some of the blocks were being left behind, being taken away. So making that connection for them to the blocks being left behind and being taken away to subtraction, to the minus sign, that's what's happening in a subtraction problem. It's a take apart problem. And comparing that to what happened in our addition problems, where Gigi was pushing the blocks Gigi had onto more blocks and ending up with a bigger tower at the end. So really just trying to make that connection between what they're seeing on the screen to how they could represent that with a subtraction problem. So my next work with those students would be helping them find a subtraction strategy that works for them. So a lot of first graders like addition and feel really comfortable with addition, and then subtraction scares them. So what we've been doing in class is sharing those strategies. I have a student who draws a picture every time, draws a picture and X's out 3 or 4, whatever the problem is asking for. I have a student who uses number bonds, and she recognizes that if she sees 3 numbers that are part of a number bond, 10, 8, and 2, if she sees the 8 and 2, she knows she needs 10. If she sees the 10 and 8, she knows she needs 2. And then I have a student who does use addition to solve subtraction problems. She looks at it as a missing add-end problem. So we spend a lot of time solving problems together and then sharing those strategies and emphasizing to the students, you don't have to use this particular strategy, but you do need a strategy that works for you, one that is accurate, gets you the right answer, and is efficient. You can do it in a quick amount of time.
All right. So let's go ahead and share out what you noticed from her reflection, and then also how she ended that puzzle talk.
One thing that she did was that upon reflection of her students not getting the right answer, instead of modeling it like a failure of a lesson, she kind of used that data in order to push her to remodel the next lesson. Instead of being like, oh, well, they don't get it. She was, being really concrete and using that data on the spot to be able to understand where her kids are at still.
I think
I
also,
also, oh, go ahead, Matt Flam. You got
when
this.
they didn't get it right, like she let them figure out that it was subtraction. She didn't just like tell them the right answer.
Haley?
I also thought she did a great job of combining the ST Math Puzzle Talk with Common Core, because sometimes there is like that gap and I haven't done a good job of doing that. So it was helpful to see that. And I just want to think through like how I can use that strategy with other standards that ST Math teaches.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful of like when we're planning puzzle talks, how are we either at the end or in the middle or wherever it makes sense applying it to our actual standards. And I think also vice versa, you know, how are we when we're teaching core lesson, if we've seen kids are really struggling with it, being like, hey, let's pull up a puzzle and actually see if we can do this using puzzles, because sometimes kids having that visual is helpful. And so how do we use it both directions to really support that learning? Anything else that stood out? All right. So real quick, before we kind of move on to the next piece, I do want to say that this page has a ton of different resources. There's some other videos on here. There are some posters. There are like teacher guides. There's a ton of different things. I'm going to show you this in 1 second, but do recommend coming to this page and using it as a resource for sure. Specifically with the Puzzle Talks Made Easy. So I clicked on, as you saw, the Puzzle Talk resources in ST Math, and it brings you to this page, which by grade level has already created lesson plans for a bunch of different number problems that you can use. So wanted to make sure that you guys had access to all of these, knowing as we move forward that it does not necessarily mean that it'll have all the puzzles that you want to use. So when we are choosing a puzzle, what we really want to think about is like, where are kids getting stuck? And there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use the ST Math data to say like, oh my goodness, I have X amount of students all stuck on the same puzzle. We're going to do it as a team. But I also think we can look at our core lesson, like the feedback we're getting from students in core lessons, when our CUMEs are coming up in a couple of weeks, how are we using other data to actually use these, to Haley's point, as a way to also push learning for our Common Core standards. So potentially you're using it to help students understand a concept that they may not have even gotten to in ST Math, or a concept that maybe most of your kids are doing okay with, but you want another way to be able to teach it to students. So again, there are a lot of plans that you can use that are provided, but you may need to also choose puzzles that don't have lessons. Using just the same lesson and learning cycle. The questions in all of the lesson plans are pretty similar. So use the resource if it's there, but if it's not, don't be afraid to choose a puzzle that's more aligned with what you want to do with your students. So because we want most of this time to actually be for you guys to dig in and do some planning, what we are going to do is, checking my time. Awesome. We have about 20 minutes for you guys to, and I'm going to share this in the chat box as well, for you guys to dig into some of the resources, looking at your data on ST Math, your scope and sequence map that you guys have already done, and actually plan out at least one. Some of you may be able to get a couple more than that done in this time. So that you guys have some ST Math puzzle talks ready to go for this week and next week. So we're going to come back together at 1:30. I have the resources links in the PowerPoint. If you want to turn your camera off, please stay on, but I will be here, as is Alyssa and Mia. If you have questions, we can pop into breakout rooms, but this is 20 minutes for you guys to do a little bit of work time. And then at 1:30, we'll come together and pair up with a partner and actually get to practice and run through one together. Sound good?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When are we supposed to be doing the puzzle talks? Like instead of a core lesson one day,
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think it's something that like with your coach, I would decide on. What we have done in the past is that we usually had like replaced a couple of math meetings each week with them. I think also if it is something that is directly tied to your core lesson, it might not be your entire core lesson, but it might be like, I'm going to do this as a way to model and build interest in the beginning before I dig into the rest of the core lesson. So I think it kind of depends on which one. I mean, definitely work with Alyssa and Mia. But I think that you could honestly do it in any part of your block depending on what the purpose of you using the Puzzle Talk is. Does that make sense, Abby?
Yeah, thank you.
Mia or Alyssa, do you want to add on to that at all since you're both here?
I would say you pretty much hit it on the head, but we were saying that we could supplement, or for especially K4, we were saying you're going to stretch out your scope and sequence anyway, so that after you teach it, it can be like reiterating the skill.
And I also don't think you need to be doing a Puzzle Talk every single day. Like 2 a week, 3 a week, depending on like, again, what is the best for the data you're seeing from your students.
This is a little bit off base, but like when I typically do a Puzzle Talk, I don't have I don't have slides that like go with it. Like we just go straight into the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, are you wanting like a scripted lesson of how the Puzzle Talk will go? Or I guess I'm wondering that just that part, like the logistics part, like, are we planning it as far as based on our scope and sequence, or would you like a turned in like script of how we're gonna teach it?
So I think it's what needs to work for you guys. Here is how my brain would work. If I know that I'm doing this Puzzle Talk and I'm tying it to data, I probably would have a slide that literally is just like the link to the Puzzle Talk I'm doing, so it's easy to get there, with like the questions or like what I'm going to ask in the notes section. And then I potentially would have one other slide that is, or 2 other slides, however many you need, that's actually tying it to the larger math concept you want. Similar to what you saw that teacher doing, where like at the end, she had a slide that was like a screenshot of that puzzle along with like a number story that helps kids make that jump to like, how do I apply it to content? But I don't think like you doing a bunch of slides for each part of the Puzzle Talk would make sense because you're going to be doing it live on ST Math.
So are we choosing any that we like already planned? Like if I planned some during our work time earlier, where we mapped out our January, there's not like specific ones on that resource page. It is like, here's a good one for a Puzzle Talk. We're choosing which ones we want to play live with them. Okay.
Exactly. So you should be choosing the ones that your data shows are the content your kids need.
Okay.
Hopefully, if you're lucky, it'll be one of the ones that the plans are provided for so that you can just use those questions. But if it's not, again, most of the questions are very similar, where you always start with like, what are you noticing? What do you think we should do? What happened? So it's a lot of questioning in it. So for the most part, the lesson plans, you almost could use them for different puzzles because the broad questions are the same. Does that make sense, Abby?
Yeah. Where was that? So that link you sent, and then the slide that says Puzzle Talk page.
Yep, so it's the Puzzle Talk page.
Yeah, and then where do I go?
If you go to the bottom, it's Puzzle Talk resources on ST Math Help. And I believe it is also directly linked on page 9.
Okay.
Or on slide 9, I'm sorry. Slide 9 is the direct link to where all those like lesson plans are.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Quick question about the pre-made lesson plans. When you were going over them, I only saw the letter K. I didn't see TK. Are they pretty similar to, I'm going to look over them obviously, but are they pretty similar to TKs?
Yeah. So for most schools, the kindergarten curriculum kind of starts where the K4s are. So a lot of them will be exactly the same.
Okay. Thank you.
So sorry, I have one question. It's kind of off topic though, but I had asked this to a few other people earlier today, Madeline, and none of us knew the answer. So This is coming up later on in this unit, but if I need to teach like addition or subtraction within 20, but that's not covered on ST Math for kinders, but it is for first graders, do you know if I'm able to assign that first grade unit and my other kids will access it?
That is a great question, because I know you can assign if it's within the grade level content. Let me email Kevin and I'll get you an answer. I do know that you still should be able to do a puzzle talk on it. It's just whether or not you can do the additional practice. So I'll reach out to Kevin and ask that question.
Okay.
And I will, let me just text him and maybe he's available.
Thanks.
If not, when I get the answer, I will send it out to everyone that's on this call so that you guys know.
Madeline, another issue I had with ST Math, with assigning puzzles to students or a whole class, if they had already completed that puzzle, they could not do it if I assigned it.
They couldn't do it at all, or it just wasn't gray?
S-
Because usually you can go back
not
and
sure.
do it. It just doesn't count it as like making progress. Does that make sense?
I emailed Emily Letourneau, is that how you say her last name?
Yeah.
And she said that they could not because they'd already mastered it.
Hmm.
So that was like, if I wanted to do like, I would think we were doing shapes.
you.
And
Yeah.
all my students had mastered shapes on ST Math, but they didn't know them, all of them in
Mhm.
like person. But they weren't, I couldn't assign it for them to go back and do that puzzle because they had already mastered it.
Okay, I will
Just
ask
to
Kevin if there's a way to do that as well.
put out there. Okay.
I will ask him those two questions and then I will forward all of you what I hear from him.
Okay.
At what time are we reconvening?
Let's come back at 35 to give you guys a little bit more time. I am still on. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to shout out.
Hey, Madeline.
What's up, Abby?
Would you recommend doing the extension activities like the following day or like to wrap up the puzzle talk?
I probably would do it to wrap up the puzzle talk so it's still fresh in kids' minds.
Okay.
I think like if there was like a running out of time piece and you like did do it on a separate day, I think that's fine. But then I would like bring the puzzle back up to at least refresh their memory so that they actually can see it. Because I think it's like seeing the physical things happening aligned with the math concept.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna come back together in 5 minutes.